Okay, welcome everyone to our last ministry session. I want to thank you for showing up. And yes, Debbie and Zahré, I want to welcome you. And I want to say thank you for being willing to do this session or to share your stories with us. I know it's a very personal journey and it's a very real, it's real stories from your real lives. So we really, really appreciate that. But I do think that it's going to be of great value to a lot of people. So I just want to open the session for us in prayer. And then who's going to go first, Zahré or Debbie? Debbie. Okay. And then Debbie will take it from there. Jesus, we thank you for this rainy morning. We thank you for everything that you use to help us grow and to help us get to know you better and get to know ourselves better. And we lay the session before you. We want to come and ask for your wisdom. We want to come and ask for just your presence to touch everyone watching or attending in a special way. Lord, you know us best and you know what we need. And so I also pray for Debbie and for Zahré that you would protect them as they share these stories, that you would also just put your healing balm over everything that's happened. And I pray that the tips and everything that will be shared would really be from your hand and would make a real difference. We thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for this year and everything you're accomplishing through it. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, Debbie, you are on.
Yes, and Annette has joined us.
Welcome.
Hi, Annette. We have many faceless people, but still. Okay, so I thought Talita might do a brief introduction. So I'll just say I'm Debbie. My name tags is Deborah. You can call me whatever. And I have generalized anxiety disorder as well as major depression. I'm being treated for both of those things. So for me, it's a daily struggle from a mental health perspective. But then regarding physical health, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which is basically a chronic widespread pain, as well as CVID, which is common variable immunodeficiency disorder, which is a mouthful, but it basically means that I don't have antibodies to fight off any infections. So if I get sick, I take very, very, very long to recover, which is why this COVID situation is extremely anxiety causing to me. It's like, makes me very paranoid. So I've been dancing. I've been part of the dance ministry for 4 years now. And before that, I started ballet when I was 5 years old. And I had my first migraine when I was 7. So my health woes started at a very young age. And I remember when I was about 10 or so, I had to phone my ballet teacher to excuse myself from class because I had a headache. But like a really bad headache, my mom made me phone. Then she was like, if you're serious about this, if you're really not feeling it up to it, then you're going to do the phoning. There was no WhatsApp or anything either. So, and he said to me, if you're like this now, imagine what you'll be like when you're older. And boy, we didn't know how this journey was going to work out. But anyways, it was like So then I did struggle with my health a lot throughout primary school, but I kept on dancing. I went to Pro Arte, did my ballet there, and I absolutely loved it. And that's like the first year, like I felt so much relief. Like my anxiety was actually under control there because I felt, I was with people of the same mind and stuff. But towards the end of my first year there, my health just started deteriorating quite a lot. So much so that the following year, my mom took me out. She's like, no, this is ridiculous. I'm really not well. I can't continue putting my body through the strain of doing ballet for a few hours every day. So yes, then I moved schools, and that was a constant, going to doctors, trying to figure out what's wrong. But over and above that, the anxiety was really there because of my school situation, being bullied, and I actually developed a panic disorder during that time. My doctor thought it was asthma, but it was a panic disorder. It was through and through a panic disorder. So, and also, I mean, during high school, I think that we all start with body image issues, or we start, I don't know, thinking about, you know, what does my body look like? What do people think of me? And I think in the dance world as well, there's this unreasonable expectation of you to look a certain way. So I think that the body image issues actually started a bit before. But leaving karate and going to normal school, picking up a lot of weight, I started having an eating disorder, and then that was more anxiety, because I hated my body so much. There was just this complete hatred. Yeah, so I think that the main causes of my anxiety throughout my life, mainly, is what people think of me. And I think that all of us struggle with that. We're always wondering, in a new room, in a new situation, and in a dance situation, what do they think of me? Do they think my technique is good enough? Oh my goodness, my leg isn't as high as them when I développé. Oh my goodness, they're going to think I'm so bad. So, and I think that that's also leads into my perfectionism. It's like these unreasonable expectations of ourselves. And I think a lot of us, we, because we strive for perfection so much, our way of coping with that is to start a regime to try and achieve that perfectionism, but at the same time, it's like a self-hating regime where your expectations are too high. So you're like, okay, I hate my body. I'm going to start dieting. Not to change your lifestyle to be good for your body, but to be to try and reach that unreasonable standard you have for yourself. And what happens in the end? You fail. That causes more anxiety, and it's the cycle that just keeps on going around and around. So yes, I'm extremely hard on myself. Talita, I think that you can attest to this with my dancing, and in general, I'm very, very hard on myself. And I, it's really, when I think about my situation, it's actually like I need to give myself some credit. I stopped ballet for 17 years before I started again. And I expected myself I haven't done ballet in 17 years. I expected myself to go there, do my prima ballerina stuff, and I couldn't. And that was terrifying to me. And also trying to make people understand, like, don't judge me for not having perfect technique. Don't judge me for not being able to do the splits anymore. But once again, people don't understand us if they don't try to. And one of the sources I'm going to mention later, Rachel Hollis, she actually said, it's none of your business what other people think of you, because it's their thoughts. So that's quite a challenge for me to think, what do these people think of me? And it's like, no, it's none of your business. Just be yourself, Who? So, and I think that also comes along with an inferiority complex, thinking you're not good enough, always trying to prove yourself to others. And these are still things on a daily basis that I need to sit down and I need to say, well, I'll speak a bit more about tips later, but it's something that I do struggle with daily. And I think with my health, what makes that difficult, especially in the dance ministry, is I feel like I'm constantly letting people down. Obviously, okay, not only in the dance ministry, but in the dance ministry, we have to commit to doing a certain dance. We have to work at it. But with my health, it's not always possible. And I was thinking about it the other day, and I've been part of the dance ministry for 4 years now, but I've only performed about 5 dances, which is not much. But I'm trying to tell myself at least I performed 5 dances, and each one of those performances built me up in some way. So I quickly want to mention a few examples of my anxiety-related situations with my dancing. So speaking about one of those 5 dances, one of them we opened for the Cherish Women's Conference, and it was such a fun dance, and we were so amped. But during the dance, I forgot a single move. It was like this arm, and I forgot that move, and it broke me. After that, I was in tears, and for about 3 days, I was depressed. I was just completely depressed. So, it's so stupid. It's like one move, but the impact that it had on my life, just quite severe, actually. Another thing, this is more of a health-related blunder, if you would. Well, I shouldn't call it a blunder. I was helping choreograph a chorus of a dance. I think it was at the start of this year even. And I was feeling so sick, but I committed to this choreography. So I was like, I'm going to teach these girls my section. So I got to the rehearsal, and the choreography I taught was about half the steps that I actually had choreographed, that I told them to do. So these poor girls had way too many counts for the moves. They had to do this like layout for like 4 counts and balance, and then they performed the dance, and then they performed the dance again, and I was just so embarrassed, and no grace for myself, no whatsoever, because now it's like my blunders are on display. So that was terrible, and the anxiety that caused was just it was really tough. Also, I hate being late, but I also hate pre-class chit-chat, because it's like, dealing with people I don't really know and being anxious. I'm sure, with many of us, especially if we're new to a class, if we meet new people. I'm not sure about you guys, but I'm like, oh, let me just hold back. I just want to dance. But actually, once you get to know the people, you realize that ballet is more of a social thing, and you can actually let go. So, I've got actually quite a few more examples of my hardships in dance, but I think that I'm going to move on to some of my tips. I also just want to clarify that fear and anxiety are very similar, but fear is something with an imminent threat, whereas anxiety is, it's like fear, but there's nothing. You're more afraid of uncertainty than you are of an imminent threat. And one of the authors that I'm also going to speak about, he talks about catastrophizing. And I think that many of us who deal with anxiety catastrophize. We think, oh my word, this is going to happen, and then that's going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and the world's going to end, and I'm going to, die or whatever. But so yeah, we do have a tendency to catastrophize. So there's this podcast that that I really want you guys to listen to, especially this one episode. Zahré is going to put up the resources so that you can write them down. I will also share the link to this app in the chat for you guys, because it's really quite fantastic. Okay, so this podcast, Everything Happens with Kate Bowler, and specifically this episode, Living Inside Our Bodies with Hilary McBride. She is a psychologist, therapist, dealing with people with post-traumatic stress and a number of other things. And she's got this theory called embodiment. And I mean, how many of you think that your body is attached to your mind? I'm not sure if any of you feel that way. You think of yourself as your mind and then your body. I certainly think that way, and it's this relationship that I have with my body, this disembodiment, and for many of us, that's because we have a poor relationship with our body, and accepting that our bodies and our minds are one whole thing can help a lot. And if we think about it, what forms our thoughts? Our bodies form our thoughts. Our bodies produce hormones, produce signals that go to the brain. So our thoughts, our minds are actually intimately connected to our bodies. And we need to think of it that way. And with anxiety, we tend to contract, we tend to crawl into ourselves. And what McBride says is that if a person who is anxious or hurt, who is crawled into a ball, if someone else does not come and comfort them and release that stress, then the person who is hurt and anxious remains in that tight, tense position, hurting their body, hurting their mind. If you see someone fall down, our natural instinct is to go and help them. And I think that our society these days, especially with mental health, mental illness, we shy away from it. It's a sign of weakness. It's all of those things. You're weak, you are negative if you talk about it, and that's not true. I think for those of us who see people around us experiencing pain and stuff, we need to draw close to that, to release that tension. And for the people who are anxious, realizing that your body and mind are interconnected is actually amazing, because if you think about, like, you can tell yourself consciously, I need to change my posture. I need to put my shoulders back. I feel like doing this. I feel like crawling into myself, but I'm going to put my shoulders back. I'm going to lift my chin up. And your body immediately sends signals of positivity to your brain. So I want you to try that next time you feel anxious or sad, or, see if even that posture changing influences how you feel, or influences how you go into a room. I'm terrified of crowds. I'm terrified of meeting new people. If you go into that room next time or that situation, take a breath, take a moment, just to breathe, put your shoulders back, lift your chin up high, and then enter into the situation and see how you feel. The other thing is that the reason why our bodies contract is because we are primarily set up for the fight or flight situation. I'm sure you've all heard of the fight or flight. And by moving, we can actually trick our brains into stop producing that stress hormone. And that's what's amazing about dance, is that even just dancing, just moving, you are telling your brain, the situation is now under control. I have fled my anxiety. So if you're feeling anxious, even if you just move a little bit, that will help. I mean, I'm not saying this is a cure-all, but once again, try that. And yes, I think for dancers, definitely, dancing is a great, great advantage. It can cause so much anxiety, but it can also relieve so much anxiety. And I want to read a quote that my bride says actually in this podcast. I mean, it's just been amazing if you just really listen to it. So she says, when we peel these things away and let go of the story we hung onto to feel loved and accepted, we can settle into who we were all along. And then she goes on to say, if pain is addressed, the whole body can experience more freedom and rest. We can become more open, we can ask more questions, we can be more curious, and we'll have a better understanding of other people and their fragilities. And that to me is incredible. We are all human, and to learn, obviously we can't do this alone. And I think in a dance ministry situation where you have that support, where you have people you can trust to help you share, that she says, peel away the stories that we've hung on to, the self-hatred. If we peel that away, we can realize that we are so strong and we have so much to offer because we've experienced this anxiety, because we've experienced the pain. We can realize that we can understand our fellow friends, our fellow family, anyone. We can understand the fragility of life. And that to me was quite powerful. And McBride's theory as well is to move towards your fear, move towards your anxiety. Don't shy away from it. So she says, pain is an entryway to be more loving to yourself. Go towards what hurts, be rigorously compassionate so your body learns that you are what is safe. So she also recommends that once you realize that your body and your mind are connected, that you can sit down and you can actually have a conversation with your body. If you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling scared, if you're feeling depressed, you can actually sit down and say, body, I understand. I understand why you're feeling like this. I understand why you're scared. I understand why you're hurting. But know that we are in this together. And that whole concept of moving towards the pain and not shying away from it also just was like a mind-blowing experience. But I do think that having a support structure is very important. Having someone you can talk to, having a spouse that understands you, and having friends, having family, people you can confide in. And you'll soon realize, because what I always felt is that I have nothing to give to other people. I am so empty, so broken. But realizing in a close relationship that you can have a mutual understanding, a mutual situation where each person can benefit from that relationship is what we need to strive towards. So that's all about that, peeling away the stories that we believe about ourselves, that we had about ourselves. And yeah, so that's that podcast. At the end, I just want to read what Kate Bowler ends that episode by saying, is she says, "Tell the truth. What are you afraid of?" And that goes back to the whole, society tells us we are negative if we share, we're weak. But she says, don't make honesty the enemy. And we have each other, and together we can handle a little reality with a whole lot of love. And yeah, so we all need a good support system. The other thing that I really, the other two books, Rachel Hollis's Girl, Wash Your Face and Girl, Stop Apologizing, I really recommend you read these two. She's like hardcore goal-driven, so I can't always keep up with everything that she recommends. But I listened to the audiobooks, but I actually went and bought her Girl, Stop Apologizing, and I keep it next to my bed. And on the days that I feel like I just need to kick up my butt, I open it up and I find a passage. And I think with this book, anywhere I turn to, I'm like, wow, yes, that's incredible. I really need to do that. Like here where I opened up, it's like writing a letter to yourself from your persistence. If you're self-hating, write a letter to yourself saying, you might hate your flabby arms today, but think of all of the amazing things that your arms did. They cooked lovely food. They gave compassion to people. They give amazing hugs. So that's just one of the things that she says in there. So I would definitely recommend that you give those a read or a listen. The audiobooks are great. She actually reads the audiobooks herself. And then Matt Haig, he suffers from debilitating anxiety and depression. And I love his take. He's so candid, so open about what it is to have a really bad depression and anxiety. And his way of writing, he just shoots out like single sentence things. So it's and they're short books. And he also has a lot of good stuff to say. One of the things he says is his tip on how to be happy and free. Number 1, do not compare yourself to other people. Number 2, do not compare yourself to other people. Number 3, do not compare yourself to other people. You get the point. So I really like his view on the world. The Notes on a Nervous Planet specifically speaks about how the world is actually shaping us to be anxious. He goes into a little bit more on the history and sciencey side of things, but his anecdotes and his tips and his revelations just on how we are being shaped out, the marketing, the anti-aging marketing, for example. If you think about it, wrinkles are fine. We've always, like for thousands of years, aging is a natural process. But now there's this anti-aging marketing thing, and now all of a sudden we are afraid of aging. Why? Because of marketing. So that's another thing that we need to be aware of. So the other thing that I really encourage you to do is take some time for yourself in the morning and assess how you're feeling. See what you need throughout that day. Have some quiet time just so that you can remember all of these things that you need to do. I'll speak a bit later if we have time about certain things that you can do to just like ground yourself. So I just want to end off with these two quotes. he who fears, he shall suffer, already suffers what he fears. I think that is really well put. It's a bit of a twister, but I think that's quite a good way of realizing what anxiety does to us. And then one of my favorite poets, I love Emily Dickinson so much. She says, if forever is composed of nows, maybe the nows are made of maybes. Maybe the point of life is to give up certainty and embrace life's beautiful uncertainty. So once again, that's drawing near to your fear and realizing who you were all along.
Thank you for sharing so candidly. I think when I'm pregnant now, and when you are pregnant, especially in your first trimester, your body feels completely unreliable. And I told Debbie that for the first time, I think I have a little bit of an understanding of what life must feel like, because I think essentially for you, because we never want to let people down, and we want to always show up and do our best and that's essentially, I think a lot of dancers are that way. I think a lot of people are that way. But then when your body is like almost untrustworthy and you can't, there's that uncertainty the whole time. And so thank you for sharing. I think a lot of us can relate with what you're saying. And I think the crux of it really is that, yes, I'm always aware of what people are thinking, and we never actually know what they're thinking. We never actually know where they're at or where their thoughts come from. So thank you so much. Zahré is going to take over next. And before I forget to introduce her again, I'm quickly going to do that. So Zahré has been a dancer in our community for quite a while. But she's also a teacher. On Saturdays, she teaches some of our students. And yeah, she's walked a hard, real road with anxiety, I think, for most of her life. And so, but we as a team also have seen her go through quite a bit of breakthrough in her journey as well. She's also an occupational therapist. She's studying she's finishing her occupational studies this year and doing her practical year next year. And so I'm very excited to hear what she shares. So, Zahré.
Thank you, Talita. So, yeah, I'm very excited to share a bit about my story. And also just, yeah, thank you, Debbie, for all those tips and the nice resources. I think it's so important to, know about those things and actually, yeah, go and spend some time reading up on that. So my story actually started in, grade 5. It was the first time I had like a, very debilitating experience with anxiety. It influenced like all the areas of my life, from unable to sleep to unable to go to school, unable to eat. Yeah, and especially with relationships. So for years, I felt like I was a very big problem in our household. Everything in our family was kind of, or I felt like was surrounding me and my problem. And even though I tried so hard to manage it, I kind of felt like no one understood, and they thought I was doing it on purpose for, I don't know, maybe attention. And I just felt very alone in that sense. From grade 5 onwards, I've struggled with anxiety on and off, sometimes worse, sometimes less. But it was a very alone time, actually. I think it was just that thing of seeing it as a burden. And like Debbie said, that whole thing of, the book saying, don't apologize, where I kind of felt like I had to apologize the whole time, for, oh, sorry, I'm feeling like this, sorry, I'm feeling like that. So rather keeping everything inside. So how it always happens. The emotions start bubbling up, gets full, and then there's like this big explosive event filled with anxiety. And, I would go to therapy, try different therapies. I think every single therapy available I've tried. It's great. It works for maximum 2 weeks. And then I'm kind of back where I started. Nothing really had a permanent effect of releasing the anxiety. But a strange thing happened. So every time something stressful will happen, instead, I feel with their interventions, if it was taking medication or seeing a therapist, my body, instead of decreasing the anxiety, my body was just taught to adapt to that stress that I was currently feeling. So kind of like not just accepting it and dealing with it, but rather, keep on adding tools to cover it up so that I can cope with what's happening there. So it was kind of like, the anxiety goes up and they teach you something to cope with that anxiety at that time. Then the next time the stress comes, it goes up and they teach you skills to cope with that anxiety. And at a time, it becomes so high that, I couldn't cope anymore. And the strangest thing was that I thought I was doing fine. So I wasn't even at that point in my life, the breaking point. I thought, I got this covered, my mind. I'm sure most of us who's gone through an anxious period before, people are very easy to tell you, no, man, don't worry about that. Or don't stress. It'll be okay. So then you keep telling yourself, okay, well, yes, it's going to be okay. There must be something like wrong with me, maybe, because they're saying it's going to be okay. I feel like it's not going to be okay. So you tell your mind, because it's always, no, man, let your mind tell yourself, believe it's going to be okay. So I would do that. I would tell myself, okay, I'm like, Zahré, you are not stressed. You are not stressed. And then the weirdest thing was that I believed that I was okay. Ignoring so many signs just because of what society around me told me I had to do. And it wasn't, so the whole journey, like I said, was very alone. And even I've been dancing since I was 5 years old. And I grew up in a dancing world that was very lonely. So that actually negatively contributed to me feeling like I have to deal with everything alone. It was always very much also, like Debbie said, perfection and competition. And it was just a very negative environment. And it wasn't until after school when I started studying and I joined Rhythm of Hope dance that things in my life started changing. And I joined the dance ministry and I realized that it was very strange the first time I went there. And I was like, these people, they genuinely care. And everyone started sharing. Someone would say, I'm having we always share our highs and our lows before we dance. Just, I don't know, you don't have to hold back while dancing, which is actually what dancing is, having that open spiritual connection with God. And I honestly don't know how I've been doing it for all those years, without that experience. And then I saw they would be so open to sharing. And I sort of realized that I don't actually have to go through this alone, and it's okay. But it's also that thing of, you realize it and you tell yourself it, but my body didn't accept it. So it was just a thing from the mind. But yes, I didn't make it a core element of my life to accept that I'm not alone in this, and maybe I should share so someone can help me. So it wasn't until my 3rd year in university where I actually realized what the causes of stress can be. So I had a stroke behind my left eye due to stress. So I actually found like a essay, if I can call it that I wrote a few days after it happened. And when I read through it again, I was so shocked about where I am now down the road and to what my experience or where my focus was there. And then I realized that my whole anxiety perspective was also very much based on where my focus was. I was always very focused on perfection, marks, had to impress people. If it was my family, that I'm always coping, always doing well, didn't want to disappoint anyone. So that very much came out. So I want to just, go read a bit and just highlight the points where, that really stood out for me as problematic in my thoughts. So I started off the day, that specific day, I went to renew my driver's license. And then I wrote down that I was 15 minutes late to class. And I was so stressed out. But why? I don't know. Our class is from 8 to 4. It's not like 15 minutes that much. And I've never been late before. So I was late to class, and I wrote down very vividly that I was late, but I didn't waste any minutes to catch up on that 15 minutes that I missed. Then I wrote down all the assignments that we had to do, because I obviously at that time thought it was very important. And I wrote down that we got another assignment. And once we got that assignment, I wrote down, I started feeling anxious. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to start crying. And I was so proud of myself writing down. I quickly calmed myself down. Well, that's obviously what I thought. So then the next after class at 5 o'clock, we started working on our project, me and one of my class friends. And I said I didn't feel well. I started feeling very dizzy, started seeing blurry on my laptop, and obviously not wanting to disappoint anyone or myself, I pushed through. I took some time lying on my arms, sat back up, pretended everything was okay, and carried on. So I went home that night, cried because I can't see. And the next morning, my mom said, okay, no, she'll take me to practical, because we're still having our PEDS practicals. And I told her, no, I'm fine. And I wrote down that I didn't want my mom to take me, because I knew how much effort it was, how far it was, and I didn't want her, to inconvenience her, which is another thing. I'm like, why didn't I just accept help from someone who wanted to help me? So I got there. When I stopped there, I basically couldn't see anything out of my eye. So I finished the whole day of practical. Why, I also don't know. Afterwards, then I went and they did scans on my eye. And yeah, so the doctor told me that I did have a stroke. There's a vein that popped behind my eye, and it could have been really bad. It could have been anywhere. It could have been in my brain. But I'm very lucky. It missed my eye and it missed my brain. It was just in between, and it was blocking my vision due to the blood that was behind the eye. So that's what I was seeing. And yeah, I went for, obviously, you tell a person like that, it's stress. I was stressed before it happened. I had a panic attack. I know it's stress. And from, my previous life experiences, usually if you tell people like that, then they're like, oh, yes, I understand. I'm also so stressed, and then you're like, you just know these people don't understand. So they did blood tests. I think I did write down somewhere how many bases of blood they took. It was a lot. I went for MRI scans, everything came back normal. There was nothing, no cholesterol, nothing. So it ended up being a very hard realization that it was stress that caused that. And it was very scary to realize that that is what stress can do to you. And for me, it was very relieving to actually have my family realize the degree of stress that, yes, I actually experienced, just to have that support as well. So then, it was weeks, a few months of going for scans, seeing how the recovery is going, because obviously, due to the fact being that it was stress related, the only medication that they could give me was calming tablets. So I only took the calming tablets for a few days because those calming tablets made me feel very weird. It was very strong, so I didn't feel well. And then I decided, okay, well, I need more than just this. And so many people started giving input into my life. And yeah, I just want to read. So the one day, my aunt sent this message to me, and she said, your fairy trial wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to astonish the world and draw kings to Christ. Who are you drawing? Let God use your testimony to astonish others and draw close to him. You were born for such a time as this. The fire will not burn you. Let the fire ignite a praise in you. God is with you and he is for you. Walk through the fire. And I made a very big life decision saying that, okay, either I'm going to now really address and manage my anxiety and give it all over to God, or I'm going to need a heart transplant or be blind. So that bodily experience made me decide. And it wasn't an immediate, like, wow, my anxiety is gone. Anxiety is something that, it's always there. It comes up at times. So it's very important to prepare for those times of anxiety. So that brings me to something that I would like to do with you today. Just to make it a bit more practical, because in times where you are very anxious, it is very difficult to remember the things that you put into place for yourself. So I'm going to cover some tips with you that worked for me, but you must remember that it's not a one-time fix. So it is a work in progress. And yeah, if you fail, that's okay, but we'll cover that as well. So first, when you are extremely anxious and someone tells you, just pray, let God calm you down, and you're in that downward spiral and you feel like you can't remember how to pray, you don't even you can't find that second to just sit down, calm down and relax, then I recommend using a mindfulness technique. So I'm just going to share my screen quickly. So with this mindfulness technique, you use your 5 senses. So it's a very concrete technique for when you feel extremely overwhelmed. You can't gather your thoughts. You can't get yourself to sit down, just calm down and pray. Then you can use this technique. So if you can just, I hope you're sitting somewhere in a quiet area, quiet place. Just make yourself comfortable. Put your feet nice and flat on the ground and then close your eyes for me. So I want you to take a very deep breath in and just feel how the air fills your lungs and out, and feel how your chest collapses down. As you take your next breath, focus on what you are feeling. Feel how the chair is pressing against your legs. Feel your feet against the ground. Feel your clothes on your skin. Maybe you are feeling cold. Maybe you're feeling warm. Focus all your attention on how you are feeling at this moment. How is your skin feeling? What is touching you? And feel how gravity is just grounding your body onto the chair and your feet onto the ground. Then I want you to move your focus to what you are hearing. If you're wearing your earphones or your headphones, then maybe in my background, you can hear some birds. But what are you hearing around you? Focus on that. It might be silence. Now I want to take your focus to your mouth. What do you taste? Are you thirsty? Are you tasting anything specific? Then the next sense that I want you to focus on is your smell. So take another deep breath in through the nose and focus on, what do you smell around you? Do you smell the fresh air after the rain? Maybe some perfume. What do you smell around you? And then I want you to just slowly open your eyes and look down at your feet. What do you see? Look at your shoes or look at your feet. Look at your toes. Look how blessed you are to have 10 toes and working ankles. Look at your knees. Maybe they are covered with pants. Maybe you're wearing shorts. Then focus on your stomach. Look at your stomach. What do you see? Take a deep breath in and see how the stomach rises up with the chest and how it lowers down as you exhale. And how amazing that is, that air that you take in gives life to every single cell in your body. And look around you, see all the objects around you. Maybe look at the wall color, the texture of the wall, the direction of the wall, and just take it in. Good. And then I want to end just with a deep breath in and out. Okay, so this technique is a very concrete way to help you to just calm your flight or fight mode. So like Debbie said, when you start to become anxious, hormones are actually released into the body, and the body wants to react with a fight or flight mode. Wherever you are, in a test or in a meeting at work, and you start to become very anxious, so anxious that you feel debilitated, and you feel like you can't gather your thoughts, just focus on what God gave you. What do you hear? What do you feel? What do you taste? What do you smell? And what do you see? And it's okay if you don't hear or taste or smell anything, and you just see one thing, a pencil. That's okay. Just focus on the pencil, how it feels, what it looks like, just to ground yourself, just for that flight or fight mode to pass. So it's just, a very quick, calming way to decrease your anxiety. And then I would just like to cover a few more tips. So my first tip, which really helps, because I know if I get anxious, it doesn't matter what people say. It doesn't matter what I told myself I'm going to do. That just doesn't happen. So you have to prepare for the times you are anxious. So if you have a Bible verse that makes you feel calm, if you have a song that makes you feel calm, you have to prepare that. I know if I read certain verses, it calms me down. But if I have to go while I'm anxious, open my Bible, page to that verse, at that point, I'm not capable of doing that. So have it somewhere ready, on your fridge, somewhere where, okay, I'm anxious, walk to the fridge, or you anyway, go to the fridge, I don't know how many times a day. Then you read what you wrote with that verse. Or have the song on your phone. Save that song in your notes so that you don't have to go through your playlist. You go to your notes labeled for anxious times, or this is the song, and you open your notes and the song is there. So make it easy for yourself. Then my second tip that I want to share is that you have to set constant reminders for yourself that God is in control. It's one thing to tell yourself, God's in control, everything's going to be okay. And it's another thing to really believe it and, make that a bodily experience as well. So you can tell yourself, God's in control about the situation, it's going to be fine. And 10 minutes later, not out of your own fault, but you forget. I know I do. And then when I get myself, I am using my own strength, own abilities to try and manage the situation. Even though I just told myself, God's in control. So initially with this tip, what I did was I set reminders on my phone for every 30 minutes. The reminder would go off just saying, God's in control, God's in control. Just so you embody that, where you like, okay, I want to start taking control of the situation. Oh no, wait, God's in control. And also just to have grace towards yourself. I feel like, this one is very important. And like with anxiety, it doesn't just go away. It's a constant work in progress. So if you are stressed, like for example with me, one of my very prominent symptoms when I am anxious is that I struggle to remember. So if it's my first day on my practical, I would meet people, I will remember no names. I will remember no directions. And usually I would have been very hard on myself. I would be like, oh, why can't I remember? I mean, I've lived in Pretoria my whole life. Can't I remember how to, drive to mainland? And now I drove past. And then I tell myself, okay, you know what? I am anxious and that's okay. Tomorrow, I will be able to remember again. Just not being negative towards myself. So, it's very important to remember to have grace towards yourself. And then with that point, I want to say then it's important to change your perspective. And this is also not an overnight thing. And if you get yourself thinking back on your old perspective, that is okay. So I always had the perspective, well, I hate being late as well. I have to be on time and actually have to be early because just in case, So I have to be there. Then I'm like, okay, well, if I look on Google Maps, it says drive so many minutes. And I'm like, okay, but like 15 minutes for in case, 15 minutes for traffic, 15 minutes for this. And it's exhausting. It's so exhausting. And then changing my perspective to, oh my word, I'm going to be late. Changing it to, I made a big effort to be on time. I am going to be late now. There's nothing I can do about it. And I am human. And with that, I want to just also add, that is where I think it is so important to be in a supportive environment. And that is definitely what the dance ministry offered me and what the dance ministry is all about. Because especially with dancing, you are so vulnerable in front of each other. Because if you think about it, it's a very vulnerable thing that you have to do, moving your body, dancing in front of people. And for me, going through this process, I would be late to dance ministry. And I don't have to apologize in feeling sorry, but I apologize by being late and being like, I'm late. Like, can you believe I'm late? You know, I like did it. I tried to be a bit late just to conquer that anxiety. And then in that supportive environment, you know, they clap hands and they're like, oh my word, you know, like, well done, you 2 minutes late, you know, because in that environment, they know me, they know my heart, and yeah, they support you through the process. And then just lastly, so I also feel with having grace on yourself, don't tell yourself, but ask God. So if you want to write this down, just to have an example with you. Also, like McBride said, you know, don't shy away from your anxiety, but accept it. So don't tell yourself, no, I'm not anxious. No, I'm not anxious. Because let's just face it, that doesn't work. Rather tell yourself or tell God, God, I am anxious. Please help me, or please be with me. And you don't have to expect God to take your anxiety away, but that God will be with you while you are experiencing that anxiety. So I'm just going to repeat that for if you want to write it down. So don't tell yourself you are not anxious, but rather say, God, I am anxious. Please help me with the exam, to get through the day. And that's the same if you are tired, if you're feeling hopeless. So yeah, I feel those are the tips I wanted to share. And then I just want to share some short life experiences that I had with God and the anxiety. So straight after the bleeding behind my eye, and you know, then my anxiety was like straight through the roof. I mean, because then all the anxiety I was lying to myself about surfaced, and I was sitting with this stress that, you know, my eye might be permanently damaged. And that next week we went into an exam week. And I was just, you know, in the process of, you know, reminding myself every 30 minutes, God's in control. Everything was so all over the place, so confusing. And I went and I wrote a test. It was our psychiatry test, which, you know, if you pass the test, then that's amazing, because, yeah, you know, that's the difficult one. So I wrote that test. I studied so little because I felt my body was tired. You know, I remind myself God's in control. And I ask myself, you know, God, I am tired, I'm anxious, you know, help me. What must I do? And I just felt this peace of go and sleep, you know, go and sleep. It's okay. Don't study like to the next day like I would have done usually. The next day I went, I wrote the test. I was so drugged, so anxious. I don't even remember that I wrote that test. And my marks came back and I had 100% on the psychiatry test. 100%. I couldn't believe it. Like my friends around me couldn't believe it. I was like, God is amazing. I mean, that was like, he showed me, you know, like all the stress. I literally said, you know what, God, I choose you. You are in control. And he just showed me that if he's in control, he is in control. It's just amazing. And up until this day, I don't have any problems with my eye, with my health, nothing. God fully came and restored everything. It was just that turning point that he had to, that had to happen in my life for me to realize that I'm busy with a very destructive, downward spiraling lifestyle. And he doesn't want that for me. He doesn't want that in my life. And it has still been a challenge. It's still a challenge up until this day with anxiety, but at least not alone. Definitely with God and with an amazing support structure where I can go and dance. I can be myself. It's just such a healthy dancing atmosphere where I can express my love for God with people that support and care for me. So just my very last story, which is a very practical example of the whole embodiment, moving, theory that is amazing. So I always have after the whole stroke that happened, I got a Garmin watch, a health watch, just to track, my heart rate, sleeping patterns, and those things. So I can see, I need to calm down now. So I went, and this was only 2 weeks ago. I went to dancing and I was quite anxious. I was going to write my very last final psychiatry exam that Friday. And I felt extremely anxious, but knowing, just go and dance, put it in God's hands, go and dance. And I know walking into the class, I looked at my watch because then, I can feel the anxiety. And my heart rate is in the hundreds, 116, 120. And we start dancing, practicing for the show, having quite a workout, sweat dripping, feel the heart rate going, very, I'm like, you're burning calories. And I'm like, my heart rate, I wonder what it is now. And I look down at my watch and it's 80. And I was astonished. Like, I couldn't believe that my heart rate from a high heart rate goes down with heavy exercise. I mean, it was the strangest thing. And then as we cooled down and we stretched and I felt my actual heart rate, and my breathing slowing, I looked down at my watch and I saw my heart rate climbing again. Up and up and up. There goes 98, 99, and into the hundreds. And it was the strangest thing to me how that physical dancing activity decreased my anxiety. And you always hear about people saying, if you're anxious, move. If you're anxious, dance. And you kind of like, even I was also like that. So it was just amazing to see how, God was just also, there in that moment where I could just dance, praise his name. And my mind was taken completely away from the anxiety and just focused on the moment and on the movement. So yes, that embodiment. If you feel God calling you to dance, even if it's just going to the dance ministry, to pray with your group, you should definitely do that. It's yeah, physiologically, it is definitely very valuable. So yeah, that is what I wanted to say today.
Thank you so very much. I forgot to say that during that year when she had her stroke, I think it was a month or two after that she danced the main character in our Alice show last year as well. So it was such a big miracle for us because she was really at a stage where she was carrying out all things that cause stress or anything, but she was like, this was one thing she was still going for, and it actually, yeah, I think it helped, and it was something exciting, but it was such a testimony to our whole group. So thank you very much for being so honest and for being so real with everything that you shared today. I think I also just wanted to mention, Debbie, for me, over the years, I think one of the biggest helps have been the fact that, because I think people don't always understand, and I think a lot of what both of you have mentioned is the fact that people maybe don't take it as seriously, or they don't know what you are experiencing. So there's always that uncertainty, but are people taking this real? Is it? But what I appreciate from both of you is showing up as you are always. So even if it's like, guys, I'm still not feeling better, this is still my situation, and coming to the dance ministry or to class and saying, guys, this is where I'm at today, but for not withdrawing and just showing up to the community and helping us care for you, also, and saying, guys, this is what I need, I'm feeling very lonely, I'm feeling, because I think that goes against everything that causes the anxiety. The anxiety is caused by, I don't want people to think I'm weak. I don't want people to think I'm imperfect. I want to put up, and I think it's something we all do, I want to put up this front that everything is under control. I have everything. And if we're honest, nothing is ever in our control. I was thinking as you were sharing, Zahré, about wanting to be on time, and I think it's a very personality thing as well. But as you get married and you get children, and it's as if you invite more, I don't have control over the situation. Like when my kid is sick, I don't have control over the situation. When he's not, like, I'm not in control of how late I am, then he gets a diaper, that type of thing. So I think for moms as well, your anxiety levels rise as that perfectionism that or the expectations that we have of each other, or the front we want to put up for people, you're not able to keep that. You're not able to stay there. And I think it's not a little thing. If you identify perfectionism, if there's some of that in your life, I think it's something to take serious. I think both of you, what you've shared and the effect on our health that it has, not just our mental health, but our physical health as well. It's not something to take it's something to take serious. I think that's what I've learned from today's session, as well as to not feel like a burden, like to keep showing up. And I think that's the crux for me about the fact that you keep showing up as you are. Like, I'm not a burden. And I wanted to share yesterday, because I've been in bed and I also feel like I'm letting people down the whole time. And so I don't know how it came up, but Louis Giglio has it's like the most watched video of this year. And it's about the podcast name, the YouTube preach, or the YouTube video's name. Sorry, let me just give Ian something to keep him busy. Here we go. It's Winning the Battle of the Mind. And he was actually speaking about the spies going into Canaan, and how they thought that in the people's eyes, they felt like grasshoppers. And they said, the people look at us like we are grasshoppers. And he says, but nothing indicated that they knew what those people were really thinking. Like, it wasn't the truth. And that people are thinking this, or people, was the crux of why they couldn't enter the promised land. And so he has this whole thing about our thoughts and how we are supposed to take control of our thoughts sometimes, or maybe just identify the thought that's coming in, like Zahré said, and having truth to counter that, to say, but this, what I'm feeling now, isn't in line with God's truth. And so that's also something that I just wanted to add or share, that gives us a little bit of sense of, I have a little bit of control, I have a little power. So I'm going to put that in the description as well, a link to that, to Louis Giglio's talk. It's just really, I feel like it fits right in with what you guys say today. But thank you so much. Thank you for everyone that joined in the session today. I think it was a very, very special session to end off with, and so relevant. And I also just want to reiterate, if you have a dance community or if you have a studio, that we learn from this as well, that creating a safe community for people to be human as dancers, allowing dancers to be human, is so important, because it has effects much further than just their physical lives. It affects everything about them. It affects what they believe about themselves. It affects how they approach life from here on out. So if you have a dance community, I urge you as well to create a safe environment where people can be themselves while we strive for excellence, and it is a balance. So thank you, everyone, and we won't see you again next time. This was our last one for the year, but you are welcome. On our YouTube page, there's also a playlist with all the ministry sessions that have passed. So if you need some tips or advice or input into how to create a community that is supportive and uplifting while working towards excellence, those resources are also there. You must have a wonderful day further.